Hi everyone, welcome to Linden Hill Farm, where my husband Adam and I share from scratch skills for everyday life. Today I'm going to show you how to get your sourdough starter going so you can make bread at home and experience all the benefits sourdough has to offer. For this tutorial, I'm going to assume that you have a starter culture somewhere in your kitchen, whether it's on the counter or it's dormant in your fridge. So if you have a jar of sourdough starter in your fridge, even if it's discard and it's not active, you can use that, which is something not everyone says. It may take a couple of rounds feeding to get it super active and bubbly again, but rest assured your discard hanging out in your fridge is more than likely still alive, it's just dormant. Bacterial cultures aren't limited to sourdough, actually. They're used in everything from kombucha to yogurt and cheese to wine and beer making. Whatever culture we use, it is alive and it feeds off of sugars with liquid. As the little cultures consume the sugars, they begin to ferment the product, and when you're using yeast cultures, they will create air bubbles and lift. In sourdough, bread starts rising. When you're activating sourdough starter, you're waking up and feeding that small culture of yeast bacteria in order to create a bubbly environment so you get lift in your bread. Today I'm grabbing my jar and removing the rubber bands and coffee filter from my most recent batch and grabbing a new clean jar out of my jar storage area, giving it a rinse to ensure that it's clean. Sometimes I just weigh my current starter using a similar empty jar just to see how much starter is in there and then feed it straight into the current jar. But today I have too much starter in that jar, so we're transferring it completely into a new jar. If you're new to sourdough and that totally didn't make sense, it's okay. Just use the method I'm showing you today and you'll be totally fine. So I put my new clean jar on my scale and hit the tare button so it reads 0 grams. Then I give the current starter a quick stir, especially if it's from the fridge, or you can pour off the dark liquid that forms when it's in the fridge for a while. Smells good. I don't know why I always smell it, but I do. I love the smell. And pour in about 100 grams. And I try not to do more than 125 grams when I'm starting a starter from a fridge. If you're trying to activate starter that's been in the fridge for more than a week or two, I'd start with only about 25 to 50 grams actually, and then feed it again later in the day. Before adding flour and water, take note of how many grams of starter that you poured into your jar. For me today, I poured in 110 grams of starter. Now I hit the tare button, so the scale goes back to 0. And I like to have my starter at 100% hydration. That means I'm adding flour and water at a 1-to-1 ratio. The same amount of both flour and water. And in this context, the same amount of starter and flour and water. So all three are at a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. So I'll add in 110 grams of flour because I have 110 grams of starter. And then I'll add in 110 grams of lukewarm water. If you're trying to wake up a cold dormant starter, I'd use slightly warmer water, just a little bit warmer. Also, the grams don't have to be perfect. If you accidentally add 112 grams or even 115 grams of water, don't freak out. It's totally okay. Been there, actually there all the time. Sourdough is very forgiving and it does not have to be perfect. Now we can set the scale aside and stir up the starter, flour, and water together. Try to ensure all the dry flour gets mixed in really well. The consistency you're looking for is a thick pancake batter, something like this. I wipe off all excess moisture so that my coffee filter doesn't get wet. Maybe someday I'll get around to making those cute little fabric covers for my jars. Funny side note though, I don't drink coffee very often, so I only have coffee filters for ferments, like this one. I'm the weirdo that rarely drinks coffee. And I secure the coffee filter over the top with a rubber band. I also put a rubber band around the jar where I can see the line of starter inside so that I can keep track of how much it grows. Some people use a permanent marker and then just clean it off with a magic eraser. You can do whatever suits you best, but it is a good idea to keep track of how much it grows. Now, what do I do with the starter culture that I didn't use for this project? I put a lid on a jar and I put it in the fridge. This is what is now known as discard. It's really not discard at all because it's still alive and I can feed it again to bring it back to life just like I did today. Or I can make discard recipes with it, like pancakes. Choose your own adventure. After a few hours, or longer if your starter came out of the fridge or is slightly dormant, when my starter is active, bubbly, and at least doubled in size, it's time to make bread. bit of starter left, so I'll leave it on my counter and feed it again tomorrow. Otherwise, I'd just add it to the jar of discard and put it into my fridge for another day. And there you have it. You've learned to activate your sourdough starter. Now go do it for real. Learning simple skills is just the beginning. Practicing brings them to life. If you'd like to join us for more adventures on Linden Hill Farm, hit the subscribe button below.